So welcome everyone who's joining this webinar on water, wetlands and fires. We're looking into innovative solutions for green recovery in South America, and this webinar is hosted by Wetlands International. Thanks so much for joining us. Just to set the scene, why we are holding this webinar. We are, of course, in the middle of a global pandemic, and this has brought strong understanding that international cooperation is needed to heal the environment. We also know that this is the decade of action in order to reach the global goals set for 2030. These are the goals which are necessary to make sure that we have a resilient, livable Earth. And in South America, we know that major wetland systems are on fire with catastrophic consequences for people and nature, and that the impacts are not only local, but also global. And these two truths really present us with a major challenge globally and in South America. It starts with understanding what has happened in the landscape, what is the system change that's happened. And then the challenge is how to recover biodiversity, how to build back resilient societies and economies. We know that this challenge will involve finding ways to sustain and recover the natural systems and processes, to enable regenerative agriculture and nature positive infrastructure. And on top of this, we need to work quickly to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions. So this decade presents very significant challenges in South America and globally. And in this webinar, we will discuss the need and the means to transform the types of development which are financed and the ways in which land and water resources and ecosystems are managed. And we especially will discuss how to start building better cooperation right away in order to make a change together. So a change across landscapes and across sectors. So in this event, we're looking into the issues in South America and especially the Paraná-Paraguay river system. And we're going to explore how the EU Green Deal could perhaps help kick off the green recovery here. We're going to do this in the context of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, which is launched this week, just prior to World Environment Day, which is on the 5th of June. Now, the webinar is divided into two sessions with two moderators. So I'm Jane Madgwick, the CEO of Wetlands International. I will lead the first session. Then I will hand over to Leah Apollo, my colleague, who is a policy officer based in Brussels. We will be posing some questions to participants in the audience, and we're also inviting participants to pose your questions to speakers. And you can post these in the question and answer chat. After the event, we will be sharing a report. And during the event, we'll also be posting some useful links to follow-up events and publications that hopefully will enable you to continue on this dialogue. So now we're going to come with a question to you. Julia, please take this. So you see on your screen a question about the main consequences of wetland ecosystems being degraded. Please just submit your answers. We're interested to understand the knowledge of our participants. Okay, thank you for that. Now we see a result. We're not going to discuss, but it's maybe interested to note how you feel about the risk with climate coming out clearly at the top, and water being a key issue, which we're going to discuss further in this webinar. But without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Maria Eugenia de Paula, who is the Environment and Sustainable Development Coordinator for UNDP based in Argentina. Maria Eugenia, please share with us your presentation about the action plan in Latin America and Caribbean on the decade on ecosystem restoration.
Dear Jane, thank you very much. Thank you, Wetlands International and Fundación Humedales for this invitation. It's an honor for me to be here. And I would like to share with you some words about this decade of action, and also about an experience that we are having here in Argentina. Ecosystem restoration is fundamental to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly those on climate change, poverty eradication, food security, water and biodiversity conservation. It is also a pillar of and underpins international environmental conventions, such as the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands and the Rio Conventions on Biodiversity, Desertification, and Climate Change. The action plan for Latin America and the Caribbean, approved in the Forum of Ministers of Environment of Latin America and the Caribbean with the support of UN, specifically UNEP and FAO, follows the approach and structure of the global strategy for the implementation of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, in particularly regarding 10 specific actions under 3 pathways. One is the regional movement, the second is generating political support, and the third one is building technical capacity. The action plan should also lead to project proposals to mobilize large-scale investments for ambitious ecosystem restoration initiatives, such as a Caribbean-wide project for coral reefs restorations. The overarching vision is that by 2030, Latin America and the Caribbean have significantly advanced in defining policies and plans and implementing projects in restoration of marine, terrestrial, and inland water ecosystem as a spatial scale relevant to revert the negative impacts of degradation, and as a result, ecosystem and natural habitats across the region are in process of being restored, protected, and managed sustainably. This is the vision of the action plan. So I would like to share with you regarding this important action plan and experience in Argentina, in which we are from the UN system led by UNDP and with the different agencies in the country, UNEP, FAO, WHO, we developed a basic platform, document, in which we consider different fundamentals related to the conservation and sustainable use of wetlands in the country, focusing in a lawmaking process that is taking place here in Argentina. We consider the COVID crisis, climate impacts, biodiversity loss, and the recent wildfires in the region as the big challenges facing this decade of restoration for the accomplishment of the established recovery framework, environmental protection, and sustainable development. We also consider different voices and sectors in the country that are making contributions of great value from their roles and perspectives in this process of legislative construction, which are fundamental for their robustness. For example, representatives from the National Supreme Court of Justice, civil society, representatives such as Fundación Humedales and universities. In this framework of cooperation of the system in the country, what we would like to do is collaborate with conceptual contents that may contribute to generate more information regarding the international and compare context and its possible contribution to the national and local reality in the field. So this document looks for contribute to this lawmaking process on conservation and sustainable use of wetlands in the country. And it considers the main general aspects of the international wetlands, the human rights and environmental approach, the applicable principles, and the constitutional and national environmental framework. Also, it involves contributions related to ecosystem services, management and participation tools, as well as financing and nature-based solutions. This is one example. We can share with you, the document is in Spanish, but is a first step of a process in which we know that there is a necessity or an added value that we can give from the UN system for this important process regarding an important legal tool. This UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is fundamental, is critical, and we would like to wish you an excellent workshop today. From the UN system, we are sure that this workshop will contribute to this important decade of action. And I am sure that this is like a starting point for an important decade that deserves our dedication and attention together for the restoration of the region and the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria Eugenio. I think this is a very inspiring contribution. The framework of cooperation that you mentioned really does sound like an enabling mechanism. So I'm interested to hear later how others see this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I now want to call on my colleague Daniel Blanco, who is Director of Wetlands International in Latin America and Caribbean. And Daniel is going to home us in a little bit closer into the Paraguay Paraná region and river system and talk about the connections between what is happening there and the EU Green Deal priorities, setting the scene perhaps for discussion on collaboration. Please go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you, Jane, for this introduction. Thank you, Maria Eugenia, for this introduction for the Decade of Restoration. Mateo, could you start the presentation, please? So thanks. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. In Wetlands International, we started to work in Latin America in the early 90s. And today we have 3 main offices located in Argentina, Brazil, and Panama, and a project office located in Guatemala. In all, we are working in 13 countries within the region with many different partners. During the next 5 years, our work will be focused on conserving and restoring habitats and ecosystem services in different wetland landscapes, including deltas and coastal areas, but also river, lakes, and peatlands. We aim to improve the management of around 4 million hectares of wetlands, securing their goods and services, promoting better production practices, also improving local livelihoods, and developing more resilient cities and communities. Our effort will be also focused on the conservation and restoration of wetlands as carbon sinks, and also on enabling nature-based solutions to the development of infrastructure needed to reduce the risk caused by climate change. But in South America, we are prioritizing 2 main regions, the Plata Basin and the Central Andes. The next slide, please. Within La Plata Basin, as Jay mentioned, and in the framework of the Corredor Azul program, we are working to promote a more sustainable development model for the Paraná-Paraguay wetland system, from the Pantanal in the north in Brazil to the Paraná Delta in the south in Argentina. As Wetlands International, we function as a broker between different stakeholders, reducing distances between knowledge centers and places where the decisions are taken. In this way, we contribute to better decision-making processes by sharing knowledge and promoting inclusive dialogues. But also, through field demonstration projects, we foster innovative and long-standing solutions by engaging with cattle producers, artisanal fishers, small ecotourist entrepreneurs, indigenous communities, and local CSOs to promote wetland conservation and sustainable use. In the next year, we'll be exploring ways to scale up these successes across vast wetland landscapes. But now we know that with the COVID-19 pandemic, the need for a sustainable and robust transition became even more evident, where nature and particularly wetland assume a central role and should be valued. The next one, please. But what is at stake? The current development model, and particularly soil expansion, are resulting in deep landscape transformation within La Plata Basin, including deforestation and wetland loss. Big infrastructure projects like Hidrovia or Paraná-Paraguay waterway are threatening ecological integrity and biodiversity of large wetland systems. This land use transformation, together with the current climate change scenario, are producing drastic hydrological changes, increasing the frequency of drought events and the occurrence of fires along the corridor that were mentioned before by Jane. And we have big fires last year affecting the whole corridor. With them, we are losing ecosystem and their values, and we are losing nature. But we are still on time to halt this trend and to bring wetlands at the central stage in building more resilient and productive landscapes. Working with multi-sector strategic alliances will be a key aspect to make this happen. So we are ready to enhance collaboration towards innovative solutions for a green recovery. The next one, please. So in this land, we see opportunities for interregional solidarity and collaboration. And with this collaborative vision, we will continue working along the Paraná-Paraguay fluvial corridor to first improve mitigation and adaptation to climate change at landscape scale, but conserving the vast amount of carbon stored in wetland soils and vegetation. In second place, implement large-scale wetland restoration along the system, preventing and building resilience to future outbreaks. And in last, promote better production practices and more responsible and sustainable value change for a powerful and inclusive economic recovery. So in this search of new collaborations, we see an opportunity in the European Green Deal to join forces and partnership towards safeguarding and restoring the health and functionality of the Paraná-Paraguay wetland system as the basis for the sustainable future. So thank you for this event, And it's great to have this exchange. And finally, I want to ask for your attention to our position document, our position statement on fires along the corridor, which is a call for urgent action to stop fires and restore burned areas. And the document was shared in the chat. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle. I think you can see that this Corridor Azul initiative presents a very bold vision for a huge chunk of South America, which has lots of potential but lots of threats. So it's really a great place to focus on a green recovery agenda. We're now going to enjoy a 4-minute video, which will bring alive what Danielle has been talking about.
Water is the main element of life. It shapes landscapes and is key for environmental, social, and economic development. Only 2.5% of the planet's water is fresh water, and it is mainly found in wetland areas. These ecosystems recharge when large rivers flood or by storing rainwater, thus ensuring the availability of water in dry periods. Wetlands improve water quality by purifying pollutants. They promote good health and generate food. They are home to 40% of the planet's biodiversity and store carbon, mitigating the effects of climate change. But wetlands are disappearing 3 times faster than forests, and we are consuming more water than nature can replenish. One of the last examples of a free-flowing river system is in South America. This is the Paraguay-Paraná wetland system, which stretches 3,400 kilometers from its origin in the Brazilian Pantanal, through Bolivia and Paraguay to the Paraná Delta in Argentina. Beyond its natural beauty and uniqueness, this interconnected wetland system has a global heritage value, and its normal functioning is vital for the future resilience of the region and indeed for the rest of the world. Given its particular geological characteristics, its gentle slope, and the natural obstacles that the wetland systems encourage in its path, the speed of the water is low. This causes it to overflow, flooding the plains and giving rise to diverse landscapes and an extraordinary flora, inhabited by a large number of mammals, fish, reptiles, birds, and small invertebrates. This dynamic environment generates an exuberance of life. But what happens when one of the richest freshwater wetlands in the world faces prolonged and severe low water? 2020 has been a catastrophic year for this wetland corridor. As a result of climate change, rainfall in the region has varied significantly, causing the Paraguay and Paraná rivers to reach its lowest water levels in 60 years. Without water, the natural barrier against fire is lost, and fires spread rapidly. The dry cushion of plants' biomass and carbon stored for decades in its wetlands can easily burn in a few days. The communities of the Pantanal, the Iberá wetlands, and the Paraná Delta will remember 2020 as the year of drought and fire. Firefighters and volunteers have gone to great lengths to fight the fires, protect the biodiversity of the wetlands and the communities that inhabit them, despite the additional difficulties imposed by COVID-19 pandemic. Nevertheless, fires continue to ravage wetlands and biodiversity, causing health problems as well as social and economic tensions. Immediate action is needed to conserve and restore the health of the wetlands and the life that depends on them. The loss of these ecosystems affect the entire world and has irreparable impact on the supply of fresh water. It is the utmost importance to build bridges between regions and organizations to find real solutions to this water and climate crisis. Interregional cooperation can be a powerful tool for finding restoration solutions on a large scale, and a decade of undertaking ecosystem restoration provides an excellent framework for action going forward. Today, the wetlands of Paraguay-Paraná system need us, more than ever. Let's conserve our wetlands so we take care of life on our planet.
Well, I'm sure you appreciated that short film, which really brings to life some of the issues that have been mentioned. Now we're going to go even deeper into understanding the complexity of the issues and threats in these landscapes over the vast area that we've seen, but also touch on some of the possible solutions. So here I'm going to call on Professor Dr. Wolfgang Junk, who's an associate expert of Wetlands International and based at the Max Planck Institute. So Dr. Junk, please take the floor.
Do you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we hear you. We hear you, we
Okay.
see you. So please go ahead.
Good. So, ladies and gentlemen, the disastrous fires that struck the Pantanal during the last year alerted the national and international public to the vulnerability of this emblematic wetland and its flora, fauna, and traditional human communities. However, despite their importance, it would be inadequate to concentrate actions only on the recovery of destroyed areas and the strengthening of firefighting systems. A critical analysis shows that many human activities negatively affect the integrity of the wetland system and favor the spread of fires, such as the intensification of cattle ranching, the drainage of swampy areas, the destruction of forests, among many others. However, there are scientific and technical gaps that must be closed to enable an efficient recovery of the damage, and several measures that must be implemented to be prepared for future catastrophes, which certainly will occur. The studies and actions proposed within the framework of the program Paraná-Paraguay Wetland Systems Challenges and Opportunities for Green Recovery will deal with these problems in an integrated multinational approach. In the following, I summarize the challenges and opportunities in three groups of scientific, socioeconomic, and environmental hotspots. The figure in the background presents some data about the geographic, hydrological, and climatic situation of the Paraná-Paraguay wetland system. Starting with scientific hotspots, 2 points. First one, changes in environmental variables along the Paraná-Paraguay River channel and its wetlands. The Paraguay River acts as a highway that transports water and suspended and solid substances from the headwater regions to the Atlantic Ocean, but it also functions as a dispersal route in both directions for aquatic organisms without interruption by barriers in its main channel. Studies are required to describe the changes in the physical and chemical parameters along the river channel, including human impacts such as pesticides and other pollutants, and the changes in the populations of wetland plants and animals. Second point is the analysis of the impact of the flood poles and the light temperature poles. Along the geographic north-south gradient in South America, the impact of the flood poles on the biota and on ecological processes begins to overlap with an increasing light temperature seasonality, also called the summer-winter poles. The Paraguay River and its sloplines provide a unique opportunity to study this important ecological gradients undisturbed along the nearly 5,000 kilometer extent of the river, reaching from the equator to the subtropics. Then we have socioeconomic hotspots. First, the use of natural resources. 3 countries share the wetlands of the Paraná-Paraguay River. They use the natural resources in different ways, but mutual communication is lacking. Studies on the socioeconomic impact of the different types and intensities of the uses in the different regions are needed to evaluate and optimize the reciprocal impacts of these activities. Second point is environmental impacts of the different types of uses. The environmental impact of the different types of human activities has not yet been analyzed on a basin-wide scale. Comparative studies are required to elaborate economically viable and socially acceptable methods for the sustainable management of the natural resources provided by the Paraná-Paraguay River and its wetlands along the entire course. Coming to environmental hotspots. First point is the eco-hydrological complexity of the wetlands along the Paraná-Paraguay River system. The study, management and protection of large river floodplains is best achieved by subdividing these very complex ecosystems into smaller units with well-defined ecological properties. Brazil subdivides the wetlands in macrohabitats and Argentina in landscape units. Paraguay lacks the classification. A harmonization of the classifications is required to provide a common basis for further studies and actions. Second point is the impact of anthropogenic hydrological changes. The main stem of the Paraguay River is still not interrupted by dams, but there are 345 planned or already operating hydropower dams larger than 30 megawatts along its tributaries. The Paraná River major tributary is completely blocked by dams, with the largest one being the Itaipu Dam. New approaches are required to optimize the use of water for economic, social, and environmental purposes, mitigating negative impacts on the wetland ecosystems, its biodiversity, and its multiple functions for human populations. Third point is the impact of global climate change. For South America, as for the entire globe, severe changes in climate are predicted and already occurring. For the Paraguay River Basin, severe droughts and floods are expected. However, the ecological and socioeconomic consequences have thus far been analyzed only at a regional scale. Elaboration of a basin-wide panorama will allow a harmonization of actions aimed at minimizing the negative impacts of extreme floods, droughts, and fires along the entire river. Fourth point, recovery of degraded areas. The fires of the last year had severe impacts on large areas of the wetlands along the Paraguay River. Where and how should their recovery be started? The development of recovery actions accompanied by studies must focus on highly sensitive key areas. An inventory on a macrohabitat scale will allow a determination of those areas and the necessary activities with the best cost-benefit relationship and that can be implemented along the entire Paraguay River floodplain. Fifth point, environmental legislation. Environmental legislation is of fundamental importance for the sustainable use and protection of natural resources of the wetlands and for the recovery of destroyed areas along the Paraguay River. Different countries and regions differ in their legislative approach. The elaboration of a critical analysis of the pros and cons of the different approaches will facilitate a harmonization of the legislation relevant to the Paraguay River and its wetlands. Coming to concrete steps to be taken for the realization of the green recovery. First, establishment of a structure that allows efficient collaboration between national and international financing organizations and the leadership of the program. The leadership is responsible for the political negotiations and is charged with establishing a task force of high-level scientists whose responsibilities include, first, overseeing the formation of mixed teams of researchers to tackle the problems discussed above. Second, evaluating the value of the research proposals and make recommendations for the financing of research activities. And third, monitoring the progress of the activities by analyzing the reports and the research groups and presenting this information to the leadership of the program. Coming finally to the conclusions. Much information is already available about the different regions that are the focus of the Green Recovery Program, but it is localized and disconnected. The program allows the formation of multi-institutional and multinational teams able to elaborate a holistic view of the entire Paraguay River system such that knowledge gaps can be identified and subsequently closed. Its efforts will lead to the elaboration of efficient strategies to first recover degraded areas and threatened animal populations. Second, predict future catastrophes and prepare necessary actions, especially against extreme floods, droughts, and fire. And third, permit the sustainable management and the protection of the natural resources of the entire Paraná-Paraguay wetland system over the long run. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Wolfgang Jung. That was a fantastic agenda, I would say, for how green recovery can help transform and safeguard and bring resilience to this whole region. So you emphasize the need to base everything on sound knowledge and on a systems approach and linking the natural system with social systems, even institutions and governance, as well as the economy. So I think this came across very clearly, as well as the need to rethink water management for this region in the context of climate change. That seems to be a very fundamental point. And to achieve this, we need all kinds of collaboration within the countries, but also international. So very clear agenda. Thank you so much in a short time for putting that across. It's fantastic. Now we're going to come back to the participants with another question. So we're interested in your thoughts. I believe this is going to be a question about fires. Yes. What do you think are the main causes of fire and other extreme events in this particular region? Just don't think too much, just put your answer and we see how this is looking. And of course, it's unlikely to be one cause. Yes, which is really what you've said here. It's a bit cheating to say it's a combination of all, but probably it is, isn't it? I think anyway, there's an understanding this is not only climate, that indeed people's actions are causing this to be more likely or the fires to be more severe. So thank you very much, very knowledgeable audience. And I'm now going to hand over the management of this session to my colleague, Leah Apollo. Leah, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane, and a big thank you to the speakers of the first session. Sorry, my video is on. So before moving to the speakers representing the main institutions involved in the EU decision-making process, I just would like to invite the audience to start adding questions in the Q&A. I saw that you have already started, but please keep doing it. And maybe we would appreciate if you could state your name, your organization, and to whom the question is addressed. My colleague will collect all the questions. As a short intro, I work for Wetlands International Europe in Brussels. I will be moderating this session, as Jane has just said, which is focused on the EU and in particular on the external dimension of the European Commission's internal policy priorities, notably the Green Deal, which for those who might not know is a growth strategy approved late 2019. So the European Green Deal strives to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050 and to strengthen the EU's role as a world leader on circular economy and biodiversity. And it puts environment and climate change at the heart of the EU agenda, both in Europe and in the world. But let's try to find out how this will happen. So the EU is now in the process of defining strategic priorities for the upcoming 7 years, linked to the length of the financial framework supporting EU actions in and outside the EU. But concerning the region of our interest, South America, a round of consultation with CSOs has already happened at the regional and country level. So I'm really glad to introduce you Mr. Carles Puigmartí Borrell, representing Euroclima Plus in the Directorate General for International Partnerships of the European Commission. Euroclima Plus is the EU flagship cooperation program on environmental sustainability and climate change with the Latin American region. So we start with the regional multi-annual indicative program for Latin America. So Mr. Puigmartí Borrell, the EU has just held a CSO consultation on this regional MIP for Latin America. 5 priorities have been identified, but how can you summarize the commitment of the EU for nature in South America? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lea, and thank you so much for in behalf of the program for inviting us to be present in this event, and thank you so much from the presentations. I have to say that I have not a real clear idea about the problematic that is affecting this ecosystem, and thanks from the presentation from Maria and Daniel, I understood pretty well the problem, and also the marvelous presentation of Dr. Young, that it was very clear, and he also pointed the kind of solutions that this kind of situation can have. Yes, indeed, the European Union, the INPA, it's in the process of defining the new cycling, the new budgetary cycling. We are involved in the planification cycling 21-27. And as you mentioned, the last Friday, in 28, a meeting was held with the civil society organizations where it was presented the priority from the regional multi-annual program. I mean, this is the process that we are following, and it was presented the priorities. I will start from the more general and going to the more concrete. The general, as you said, it was identified 5 areas. 5 areas from intervention in this regional program from Latin America and Caribbean, and I will just mention them. The first one is the green transition. The second one is the digital transformation. The third one is the sustainable and inclusive economic recovery. The fourth one is democratic governance, security, and migration. And the the last one is social cohesion and fighting inequalities. Okay, these are the 5 areas. I'm going to go deeper in the green transition. That is the one that it's affecting us. And the green transition have also 3 specific working lines or 3 specific areas prioritized. The first one is the climate change adaptation and mitigation. The second one is the biodiversity and forest conservation. And the third one is the circular economy and pollution. And if you allow me, I will go a little bit deeper in each of these 3 areas. Supporting climate change, what it's pretended to do in this working line, it's the support will be provided to the countries of the region, Latin America and Caribbean. This is the new, that Caribbean countries are also included now in this scope, to fulfill the climate objective, both in migration and in both in mitigation and adaptation, that is expressed in the NDCs, in the commitments that each country has done on the frame of the Paris Agreement. How it will be this program, how it will work this program. The program will be based on the experience and the work that the program Euroclima Plus has been doing in the last, let's say, 7-10 years. So it's going to use all this experience, the background, the capacities from this program, and the program will assume the implementation of this working line. Which sectors? The sectors prioritized are forestry and ecosystem and biodiversity, especially in nature-based solutions from adaptation situations. Energy, both in renewable and efficiency energy, sustainable smart cities, resilient food production, transport and connectivity, water and water management. As you see, is a very broad area to work. As I mentioned, this working line, the climate change line, will be implemented through the Euroclima Plus program. How this Euroclima Plus program is working. This is a demand-driven program. So it needs a specific request and a specific request from the governments to be activated. The country dialogues is the key vector of identifying the country priorities. And of course, the delegations, the EU delegations are on the lead. Country dialogues, we developed in the last year a methodology from these country dialogues. And we are using this methodology that this has been sustained during the last year, and we have tested and it's working. And in these dialogues, government has the main role. And this is important because the governments at the end of the day are the ones who have to really provide the solution from all these problems that we are trying to tackle. So in these country dialogues, governments are having the main role, but other actors are integrated. So consultations or spaces from specialized actors, the academy, NGOs, social civil organizations are integrated, and they can apport the perspective and the solutions from these kind of situations. Okay, I will jump to the other sector. I said that biodiversity and forest conservation. What is pretending to do in this working line is to strengthen the protection and the conservation of land and forests, of marine ecosystems and their biodiversity, including earth conservation and manage and collect digital data. How? It will work improving policies, mainly in the management and sustainable use of the resources and biodiversity of territorial and marine ecosystems, supporting concrete strategies for effective conservation and the implementation of the forest protection legislation and local sustainable economic development strategies, especially those that develop around key transboundary and protect ecosystems, forest coasts, marines, river basins. This is its kind of a specific line that this kind of situation that you are presenting today, it's really fitting there. Strengthening capacities for forest governance, landscape approaches, sustainable land use, and investments in sustainable bioeconomy, and promoting deforestation and free supply chains. And also improve knowledge in biological diversity and ecosystem service, and strengthening the data collection capacity for evidence-based policies. And finally, the third sector that I mentioned in the beginning is the circular economy and the pollution. What is pretending to do in this area is tackle pollution and accelerate the transition to a clean, resource efficient and circular economy. And how it's pretended to do this working area is strengthening dialogue and definition of the policies and the strategies, improving the investments on climate and access, or facilitating the access for circular economic approach, improving the coordination of regional value chains, and facilitate trade in circular products, including establishing the standards jointly together with the private sector, improving product traceability systems, and using all the systems, and this is going to be very important to use systems like Copernicus or Galileo from be able to track and to figure out about to do this traceability of the products. And I will stop here. Yeah, you asked me to be really concrete and short. I will stop here, and maybe I can deep in the second question more about what we are doing, or how an NGOs can be involved in what we are doing.
Yes,
thank you
so much. Thank you so much, Carlos, because I understand that it's not an easy task to summarize in few minutes a huge program covering 7 years and lots of countries, but good to see that an ecosystem like the Paraná-Paraguay wetland system can benefit with this program you are defining now. But let's move to the country programming. So we go from the regional to Argentina with Pablo Iglesias Rumbo from the EU delegation to Argentina, presenting what the EU is planning to do in the upcoming 7 years in the country. So welcome, Pablo, and could you briefly share with us what will be foreseen under the green transition priority for the next 7 years in Argentina?
Indeed. Of course, thank you, Leah. Thank you for the question. I take the opportunity also to thank you and Wetlands International for this invitation. I'm happy to be here representing the EU delegation to Argentina. Now, and perhaps let me also just thank, as my colleague Carles did, thank the other presenters for all of the information that they have shared with us. Now, in relation to your specific question, what will we be doing in Argentina in the next few years as we commence a new programming cycle? Well, with the member states during last year and since, we developed we set out two Team Europe initiatives. The first one on digitalization and a second one on green investments. Now, of course, both of these Team Europe initiatives, or TAIs, that we refer to them as, are very much aligned with the EU's overall political priorities, as you have mentioned in your own introduction. Now, in terms of the digitalization Team Europe initiative, I will just say two quick things. First of all, it's what we will be doing is supporting the dialogue that we have, the EU-Argentina digital dialogue, and within that, we will be supporting Argentina's digital agenda. So we'll be looking at basically three areas: reducing the digital divide. We'll try to bring about a greater regulatory alignment between our respective legislative regimes, and also enhance our scientific cooperation. There is a lot already of cooperation, including bilateral with the member states, but our idea is to boost that. And what we want to see and do will be building the capacity of public authorities to offer digital services and remove barriers and costs for companies to enhance digital trade. And in this sense, this digitalization program will be trying to take advantage of the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. Now, that's broadly what has been envisioned under this digitalization program. As regards the green investments program, we are looking to intervene broadly in three areas. And I say looking because, of course, we are still at an early stage in this new programming cycle. These programs have yet to be developed, but we can, even at this early stage, already share what our thinking is, and the thinking that we have alongside the member states. So intervening in three areas is our intention. Sustainable agriculture is one, municipal level climate change is another, and the third is in the area of sustainable waste management. Now, all of these areas are going to be challenging, and arguably, perhaps the most challenging, perhaps the most urgent, might be the area of sustainable agriculture. Right. Argentina is, after all, highly dependent on its agricultural exports for its national budget, but its agricultural model is largely geared for export. It's as many of you will probably already know, it's a major exporter of soya, of corn, of beef, of wheat, of wine, etc. It's really a success story, if you like. But as is well documented, this model is indeed impacting heavily on the environment through the use of chemicals, pesticides, and we see deforestation, which is ultimately undermining the country's biodiversity and incapacitating its ecosystems, including its wetland areas. And of course, all of this is contributing to climate change through high emissions. There is also a severe food insecurity problem in the country. There are many food banks across the nation that are currently providing food for about 11 million people. 11 million people. That is 25% of the population that is being fed through food banks. That is an enormous and quite a frightening statistic, to be honest, and all the more so, given that it is an economy that is exporting so much agricultural produce. So there are these two issues that we want to address. The environmental issue, of course, and the food insecurity issue. And we want to do that by promoting agroecological practices. Now, there is a growing movement in the country. There is growing space, and we wish to support that movement or organic production. And we feel that we need to work with both large farms and smaller producers. With large farms, I think that we see that there is a lot of potential for productivity gains without clearing new land, and adequately and sustainably managing ecosystems, and also with small scale farming and rural communities. And we'll be looking at also working with indigenous communities that can provide a variety of food items, and we've already started, in fact, a sort of mapping exercise of these food banks, trying to understand how these food banks source their food. And the idea in this sense would be to help them source food that is local, that has a nutritional value. There is a real concern that some of these food banks are not providing food that is nutritionally valuable. And in this program, what we're seeing is, and we have been discussing, there's interest by the Economic and Social Committee that was recently created by the president, and so our discussions are going on in that direction. So in this area, we can say that what we are doing is very much in line with the Farm to Fork strategy of the EU, which itself is part of the EU Green Deal. Now, that is in relation to one of the areas. The other area, the municipal level climate change, I'll try to be a bit more brief here, and because I can see you're getting anxious, but all right. So so the idea here really is to work with cities, recognizing that cities are, of course, key players in this effort to combat climate change, and the idea will be also these activities guided by the EU-Argentina energy dialogue. We'll be looking at issues such as energy efficiency, distributed energy, etc. Now, on the third issue of sustainable waste management, just one last comment in this area, that basically in the country there are an estimated 5,000 open air waste dumps. So the idea would be to well, not only reskill informal sector workers in order for them to find employment in recycling plants, but also to help municipalities develop waste sorting systems as well as enhance collection systems. We already have a project of this nature in the province of Jujuy with the participation of the European Investment Bank, and our idea is to expand that. So that sort of in a nutshell is where we are and the areas that we will be looking to work in Argentina on our bilateral program in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pablo, and sorry to...
No problem.
But we are a bit, we are running a bit late, but I'm really glad that the environment is so high in the Argentina, in the agenda of the EU delegation to Argentina. But linking to what you mentioned regarding the deforestation angle, I would like to invite Mrs. Delara Burkhardt, a member of the European Parliament, to take the floor. Welcome, Mrs. Burkhardt. You were the rapporteur of the report, A New Legal Framework to Halt and Reverse EU-Driven Global Deforestation, which was approved late 2020. So my question to you is related to the focus of the report. Obviously, mainly the focus was on the issue of forest environmental degradation, but how does the report envision the relevance of wetland ecosystems?
Thank you very much for the invitation and all the important and interesting contributions so far. So indeed, the report's title makes it look like it is about forests only, but in fact, progressive groups in the European Parliament managed to extend it also to cover other ecosystems as well. So there's a lot in it for wetlands. But before I go to that, I would begin with the general idea of the report and then come specifically to the wetlands. So we know that the EU is responsible for about 16% of the trade-related deforestation around the world. Why? There's space being made for the production of beef, soy, cocoa, coffee, beef. I said beef for the European market. Forests are burnt down for this worldwide, but not only forests are destroyed for commodities of our daily use, but also valuable other ecosystems like wetlands. And while we have very good data on the EU's deforestation footprint, we are yet kind of lacking a comprehensive overview of the EU's ecosystem footprint around the world. So we have solid anecdotal evidence from ecosystems like the Cerrado, savanna, or the Penetel wetlands that are being partly destroyed for agricultural production, also for the EU market. And this is why our report also makes clear that deforestation and ecosystem destruction is therefore not only a Brazilian, Argentinian, or Paraguayan problem, but also a European issue we have to tackle. We also commit or analyze in the report that voluntary initiatives by companies to stop deforestation have not resulted yet in a U-turn, and why we figured out that binding measures are needed. That is why we as the European Parliament proposed that the EU adopts a regulation for mandatory due diligence that obliges companies and investors to ensure that their products and services do not contribute to the destruction or degradation of forests and other important ecosystems, or to the violation of human rights. So what is demanded there is that companies have to map and make transparent their entire value chain and assess the risk of their practices on forest ecosystems and people in all steps of their value chain. And where they identify risk, they shall take action to mitigate or to prevent them, with the aim to have certainty that this risk is at most negligible. Thus, what we are asking for is a due diligence regulation coupled with market restrictions in case sustainability criteria are not met. And part of these sustainability criteria coming to the wetland is that commodities might not have resulted from the conversion of natural ecosystems or the degradation of natural ecosystems. in the short time we had in the parliament to prepare this report, we couldn't yet agree on a definition of which ecosystems exactly, but we gave the recommendation to the commission, who's the one who makes the proposal, which is then the legal basis, to look into the definitions of the Accountability Framework Initiative and the high carbon stock approach, which is also covering wetlands. So therefore, in the report, we do not speak about forest risk commodities when we talk about the commodities that should fall under this regulation. We talk about FERCs as meaning forest and ecosystem risk commodities. So this is what we have demanded so far. We are waiting now for the Commission, who announced that on the 20th of July, there will be the legislative proposal coming. What I heard so far is that the Commission is not planning to include other ecosystems in the scope of their proposal, but I can tell you, as on what I have described, that the Parliament is very aware of the necessity of it, as we know that if we only focus on deforestation and forest as protected areas, we might shift the pressure that is there to other valuable ecosystems. So we are very aware of the problem, and that we want to tackle it with this legislation too.
Thank you so much. I think this is also super encouraging, and obviously we are there to support in case you need any technical information or input. We would be there to support. Now let's move to the member state level. I'm really glad, so it's a great pleasure to introduce you the Ambassador, Mrs. Tanja Miskova from Slovenia, representing the upcoming Slovenian presidency of the Council of the EU. So Ms. Miskova, water is key for the Slovenia presidency. Would you briefly tell us what are the main actions that you are planning for water and water-related ecosystems in the external dimension of the EU, and how it resonates to the region we are discussing today?
Thank you, Leah. Hello, everyone. To go straight to the point, our departure point when setting water as a priority of our upcoming EU presidency was the fact that water is a horizontal issue par excellence, and it's water-related challenges are interrelated with so many other issues, and interdependent challenges need integrated solutions. So what we will be striving for during our presidency is to get to a unified position of the EU 27 to support a comprehensive approach to water, which is firmly embedded into all aspects of the EU external action and is supported by a strengthened EU water diplomacy, which works hand in hand with EU climate and energy diplomacy. By external action, we mean EU's development assistance, its humanitarian aid, and its foreign policy actions. So we want to mainstream water across these three pillars, but at the same time to highlight water as an issue in its own right. We see a comprehensive, inclusive, multi-stakeholder, cross-sectoral, multidisciplinary approach to water on all levels, from local, regional, national, global, as the only one that is well-informed, that is sustainable, that avoids negative externalities, and that enjoys legitimacy of all stakeholders. As was said by the previous speakers, the protection and restoration of watersheds and water systems, including wetlands, is one of the cornerstones of the EU environmental policy. And we would like to support in this a well-coordinated cross-sectoral water resources management and stronger governance of water systems based on an ecosystem approach, supported by data, supported by innovation, which benefits ecosystem services and also includes circular economy principles. Circular economy is also an important priority for us. To be able to do that, of course, we need to work in partnerships. So we've been working closely together with the European Commission in particular to strengthen green alliances with our partners, notably in Latin America. So the new programming cycle, including the Team Europe initiatives, is a very good opportunity to strengthen our partnerships. And Slovenia, we're a strong supporter in this of regional programming, especially for addressing transboundary challenges such as the Paraná-Paraguay wetlands, for example. And during our presidency, we will pay special attention to water as a regional public good and as a factor of regional integration. So I will stop here and I'm available for any questions further. Thank you.
Thank you so much for briefly presenting the program and of the upcoming presidency related to water. But I would like to link to what you have just said. So the multi-stakeholder approach, the need for partnerships to achieve the goals that you have. That I would like to open the floor to address this question to all panelists, but please be brief, maybe 1 minute each, because I would like you to tell me what do you think is the added value of intergovernmental institutions such as UN or EU structuring cooperation action with CSOs? So maybe I could start with you, Tanya.
Yes, I think it's the only way we can come up with sustainable solutions is to work with you. You know, if we want to do efficient and sustainable projects, we need a comprehensive analysis of the situation. We need to understand the local specific, the local needs, the interlinkages. And we need to devise our projects in close consultations with the local communities and with non-governmental organizations to take on board indigenous knowledge, which is very precious, and to include also capacity building in the projects in order to sustain them in the long term. So we need, in order to build up this kind of resilient projects that can last and benefit in the future, we need to work with people who know the situation on the ground, because we're not there, and especially, you know, countries like mine, 2 million people with very little representation on the ground. We can never, you know, be everywhere, understand everywhere, and even European Union and or UN. You know, we need partners. We cannot develop sustainable, well-informed solutions and also gain local, I would say, input and legitimacy without working together with you. These challenges are too complex for us to be able to work alone.
Thank you, Tanya. Mrs. Burkhardt.
Sure, I can make it brief. As it has been said, civil societies are the experts on the ground, so the knowledge they bring is valuable when you do policy design, policy implementation, and of course also enforcement. This is why I also, in my proposal for FAC regulation, I proposed that civil society shall have the right to challenge non-compliance with the FAC regulation before judicial and administrative authorities. And that also national authorities in the EU have to follow up on concerns that are expressed by civil society organizations to not only make them an important partner in implementing, but also giving them actually rights that come with the FAC regulations to access and challenge its implementation.
Thank you so much. Pablo.
Okay, thank you very much, Leah, again for the question. I think my colleagues there on the panel have really, as they say in English, hit the nail on the head in terms of the reasons why it makes a lot of sense to work with civil society. You know, they are experts on the ground, and they provide legitimacy. now, and this is a reason why, you know, I myself and my colleague Carles are here today participating in this webinar, right, organized by a civil society organization. Now, might just point out the communication from the EU communication from 2012 that commits us to working with civil society. And here at the moment in Argentina, we are developing, formulating a civil society roadmap. So we want to integrate civil society organizations in all our work. Of course, for many years, we have been funding projects, and we have a portfolio of over 25 projects with different organizations working in many and diverse policy areas, from human rights to the environment, to disability, to many areas. So I think our commitment is unquestionable. We will continue, and we will be sharing this our roadmap in the coming weeks, following surveys that we have carried out and discussions and consultations that we have held. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Carles?
Yeah, I will. I think my video it's blocked by you. Okay, I will just add what it has been said, that Euroclima Plus, as I explained before, is a program based on the demand of the national authorities, but I will just remark this, just to put in value capacities of the NGOs, of the civil society organizations. Program is supporting more than 60 projects. More than the half of these projects are implemented at the field level by NGOs. So are the same national authorities, when we want to scale down and to see exactly how to implement this program, that they are choosing to work with local or international NGOs, organizations that they know how to implement these kind of projects on the field level. So this is the real added value, this capacity to develop these programs at the field level. Also, I would like just to underline the capacity to construct bridges between the situations at the field level, the academic institutions, Dr. Young representing this academic position, and the national authorities. The NGOs can play this bridge role between all the stakeholders and bring a specific and a concrete solutions at the field level.
Thanks, Carlos. Daniel, from the NGO perspective, from Wetlands International perspective, what's your idea?
Thank you, Leah. As was said, I think it's very important to make a strong connection with the actors in the territory, in the areas, in the field. I think it's important to complement each other at different levels. And as the big organizations like the United Nations or European Union could settle the global policy framework, we as civil society could have this. We have this technical capacity. We could help to connect with the actors in the territory to do the field work at the level of with the communities and with the other actors like the cattle ranchers or the fishers. Thank you.
And Mr. Jung, do you want to also add on this question? No, maybe not. Oh, yes.
I'm in,
yes.
Or not?
Yes,
Okay.
you're there.
Well, I represent more or less the rubber boot fraction working in the field and providing the data which are necessary to really find solutions, practical solutions, which can be used by other organizations to be introduced in political actions. Our activities are not directed to policies. Those are other groups as yours or NGOs and so on, who will put our data into the political line. We produce, but we are willing to produce the good data and the good scientific basis for actions to get the best cost-benefit relationship between financing actions for the recovery of wetlands and protection, long-term protection, which can later on be traduced in political action. How this works is not our game, it's your game. But we will provide this basic information. And without this basic information, you will lose a lot of opportunities and run maybe in the wrong ways.
Thanks a lot. I think I will go to the one question from the audience. So Giulio, a couple of questions from the audience because we are really running late. From Giulio Sampaio from GIZ OTCA is asking how do Wetlands International and its partners hope to mobilize public policies in a regional context through the Blue Corridor program? Is there an international agreement on the radar? Maybe Daniel.
Thank you, Leah. Yes, I will take this question. So for this, in the frame of the Corredor Azul program, we are working, first of all, at different levels, from the regional, the basin scale, to the national and the local levels. So we are working with governments that set the policies, with the provinces, and also at the municipal level, but we are also trying to make connection and work with the regional initiative, like the Comité Intergubernamental de la Cuenca del Plata or La Plata Basin Intergovernmental Committee, or the regional initiative like the Ramsar initiative for La Plata Basin. And how we are doing this, we are working, developing, first of all, like Professor Jung said, trying to make this collaboration with the university and the expert to develop high quality knowledge and information, and also then to use this information to support technical staff in governments, and also providing training to reinforce the institutional capacities. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Another question, maybe we go to the EU panelists. So the imports of soy poses several environmental and animal well-being problems. Shouldn't the region look at the alternative income sources of the Mercosur countries as method to protect the wetlands? I don't know who wants to reply to this one.
Well, maybe I can try to give a reply to this. I think we understand the question, and we'd very much like to be able to implement a program that promotes alternative produce. But we're facing a reality here of a country that depends a lot on soya for its income. And the country is in the midst of in a pandemic, like all of us, but also in the midst of a financial crisis. It has had a 3-year-long recession. Inflation for the first quarter of this year is at already 13%, estimated to be 50% by the end of the year. So I guess Argentina is in a financially very difficult situation. Changing its agricultural model is going to require money and investment, and money it doesn't have, given that it is highly indebted at the moment and still discussing with the IMF how it will resolve its debts. Now, this means that I think that any changes that we'll see will be changes in the long term. That is the reality. Through our program, we're trying to create greater spaces for, as I said in my presentation, for organic farming, and this we hope to achieve and scale up as much as we can. But the reality is what it is. It's not an easy situation for the country.
Thank you, Pablo. I think maybe the last question from Carla, San Carla. Is there an agreement between the different countries involved on regards to the health of the Paraná-Paraguay wetland system? Is this possible? Are there any international laws already or not yet? Again, I think Daniel or...
I could take this question. There is not a specific agreement for the Paraná-Paraguay wetland system, sorry, but we have the Intergovernmental Committee for La Plata Basin that include the 5 countries in the region: Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And the system, the Paraguay-Paraná wetland system, is included as part of La Plata Basin. It's the main subsystem. So in part is covered there, and also the regional initiative for La Plata Basin under the Ramsar Convention was created under the interest to support the conservation of the Paraná-Paraguay wetland system. So we have these two regional and international initiatives covering the region. Thank you.
And maybe a last question before I give the floor to Jane for the closing remarks. Maria Jose de Lazer from the Dutch Embassy in Argentina. She's saying water is key to achieving much of the SDGs. Do you think that in Argentina, water is receiving the real importance it has? Is a comprehensive vision applied to the analysis? Food system analysis under a landscape approach instead of food chain approach like soybean chain. Maybe Pablo, if you want to take this as well, or Carlos.
Well, I think it would be best if somebody else took this question rather than myself. But all right, okay. Is it receiving enough attention? Perhaps not. I think, you know, given the situation, given what we're seeing with the impacts well described by our colleagues, I think it's not given enough attention. But again, a little bit in relation to my last answer, I think here what we need is basically a food systems change in the country, but it's not going to come so quickly, so readily. What we have to do is to cooperate with Argentina. We're in the midst of trying to set up an EU-Argentina policy dialogue on sustainable agriculture, where we can address these issues. But again, it's going to be a big challenge. I think what we need to do in this respect is work as collaboratively as we can. We've mentioned civil society, but also there are UN agencies here. World Bank has a number of interesting projects, and I think that we all need to perhaps find ways of linking up our different programs in order to ensure that these interventions are not fragmented, and that we utilize appropriately our different resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pablo. I think that's it for today. I would like Jane to do for the closing remarks. I want to thank you all the speakers for your time and for agreeing to participate in this exchange. Please, Jane, up to you for the closing.
Thank you, Leah, and thanks for doing a wonderful job moderating this session. It was really a very rich discussion. And well, I heard really a lot of common ground being touched on by all the different speakers that connected actually very well with the first session, where the problem was set out by Danielle and Professor Jung. So I think what we've heard is that the analysis of the problems is in common, and that we need a mix of prevention measures to prevent infrastructure that's undermining the natural resilience of the area, particularly through the agricultural production and clearance and so on, but also a lot of emphasis on the need for enabling, for partnerships to happen, for connection between sectors, for bringing civil society, knowledge institutions, governments, and business communities and investors together, and the role that organizations like Wetlands International can really usefully play in doing that. I think everyone underlined the need for a really good knowledge base to guide that. Personally, I was super encouraged by the contribution from the Slovenian presidency to highlight water as being cross-cutting in EU's external affairs. This really could be external interventions. This really could be a game changer, and would, for example, mean that we don't have to discuss whether it's forests or wetlands, because yeah, most of the forest systems, I mean, like the Amazon, is fed by water and wetland systems. So if we take water as an entry point to bring solutions, for example, to agriculture, then we will really start to make progress. So I find this really encouraging, and I think the discussions were also very realistic. There's an urgency to bring change, but it's also, there's some really tough changes to bring forward, notably in the area of agriculture. But in that, I think Danielle pointed to some opportunities, perhaps, that where we could work, particularly with the smallholders, to demonstrate possible solutions. So there was a lot of hope in the room. I think incredible common ground from a diverse range of speakers. And I really want to thank everybody for sharing this webinar and really engaging very well. And thank you all the people in the audience who posed some really excellent questions to our panelists. Thanks, everyone. There's lots in the chat in terms of follow-up, and I feel sure that this webinar is the basis. It's just a platform that will lead to further dialogue and hopefully some real joint action on the ground. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.